Hey everyone, it's your favorite real estate agent in Las Vegas, Robert Steim, Steim Realty Network of Keller Williams, the marketplace. Wanted to bring you the market data for April 19th this past week. But first, I've been talking to a few people lately about why I put this sort of information together. I get it's a little bit boring. I mean, stats are stats and numbers are numbers and not the most exciting thing in the world. Everybody wants an opinion of what's going on, and sometimes you ask a lender, you ask a real estate agent, you ask a stranger that you bump into, and you ask for their opinion on something, and you have no idea what that's based on. It might be an educated opinion, it might not be. They might be active in the market, or they might have read an article on the news. And even news stories that we read, there was one the other day, the headline was the interest rates dropped for like the fifth week in a row or fifth day in a row or something like that. But the headline was great. I'm like, oh, cool. So I click on it, check it out, and the interest rate had dropped 0.01%. So just in a world where we try to get people to click on things, most people aren't reading headline, or they're reading the headlines, but they're not reading the articles. They're not looking for the details. They're forming opinions. They're going telling their friends, maybe irresponsibly sharing information without verifying it. So anyways, this information, I want you to kind of see the numbers. And when I give an opinion, it could be right or wrong. I have certainly been wrong in the past, but I like to think that I'm right more often than I'm wrong. And the reason for that is I do some homework. I do look at some trends. I want to have some information to back up what I'm saying. But maybe even more importantly than that, I want to be able to show people the information, because they could have a differing opinion. We could look at the same information and have different opinions, and I don't want people to necessarily go 100% off of what I say specifically, but does my opinion make sense? Do they have counterpoints? Is there data that I'm missing that maybe would change people's minds also? So all those sort of things, I think it's just important. We can all interpret things a different way. So this information I just feel like is important to get out there so that we could all be a little bit more educated and just take the time to know what we're talking about. So we see it too often these days. But anyways, back to the data, single family residents. We now had yet another week where the active listings, the inventory has dropped. So we keep the streak alive. 3,859 properties, single family residences on the market this past week. That number is down from 3,932. So we dropped about another 2%, and we're still waiting for that trend to maybe flip one of these days when we start seeing people putting their houses on the market for sale and feeling more confident about making a move. But I think right now with the higher interest rates, people are kind of staying put where they're at right now, not feeling super confident they're going to find another house. So it's kind of a catch-22. You don't want to sell your house because there's not much to pick from if you're going to move. But then there's not much to pick from because people don't want to put their house on the market. So someday that's going to switch, I think pretty soon. But as of right now, we've got a pretty impressive streak. I think we're at, 24 weeks in a row. But anyways, so we're down from 8,223 back on November 9th. That's kind of been our benchmark that we've been using. So we're down over 53% since that date. And the average sales price has decreased this past week from 526,000 to 508. Now, the funny thing is it was roughly 508 the week before. So we saw the spike from 508 to 526. Now we're back down to 508. So even though this says down nearly 3.5%, I consider that pretty much a wash because we're looking at weekly stats and those vary quite a bit. And again, the average sales price is the one that can vary. If a $10 million house sells, that brings the whole average up. And then the next week, a $10 million house doesn't sell, then that brings the average back down. But the median sales price, again, a little bit less volatile, dropped from 436 and some change to 429, so down about 1.5%. Average days on the market, we decreased from 50 days to 48 days on the market, so not a significant drop, but seeing that the properties that are on the market are moving, reasonably fast. 48 days isn't too bad. Some of them are still selling 3-4 days, and some are sitting for a year if you don't price it right and it's in rough condition and have a tenant in there and don't allow showings. So there's a bunch of things that come into play there. And then we'll touch on this number of sales that happened last week. But if we're looking at the total inventory, 3,859 divided by the number of sales last week was 442. So now we're at about 8.7 weeks of inventory, roughly 2 months. And if you recall, 6 months is kind of our balanced market. Above 6 months considered a seller's market. I'm sorry, above 6 months of inventory considered a buyer's market because there's so much inventory that buyers have the upper hand. Under 6 months of inventory considered a seller's market because there are less homes to pick from. So sellers typically have the upper hand. Again, this market's kind of weird. We're about 2 months, so technically a seller's market. However, some houses are sitting on the market and sellers are a little bit more flexible. So we are seeing buyers win some negotiations and concessions, closing costs, reduction in price, just favorable terms in some cases. So again, everything's case by case. We don't want to make blanket statements usually ever. All right, so switching to our next slide here, we're looking at the notice of default. So of course that's going to continue to rise. They're not going to report negative numbers, but this past week up 52 new filings. So we've got a grand total of 688 new filings over the past 16 weeks. So we've got about 4 months worth of data since those started coming back online. And then if we're looking at the properties that are under contract this week versus last week, pretty much the same. So we had 657 properties that entered into an agreement, a contract, 657 last week, 647 this week. The majority of those will close. The majority of them will close in roughly 3 weeks on the really fast side, 4 or 5 weeks. We can expect those to actually turn into closings. But that's down about 1.5% from last week, not a significant number. And then the properties that were officially sold this week. So last week was super slow for whatever reason. I mean, Easter was there, but whatever reason, we had fewer closings than usual. We had 350 closings. This week we had 442. So that's up over 26%, but you're allowed a slow week here and there. 442 and higher has actually been how it's been the last several weeks, with the exception of that 350. And if we're looking at key factors driving the real estate market, trying to switch it up a little bit because I've had the same information there before, but same information really, but just a different way of saying it. New inventory hitting the market soon. I'm expecting to see more. I think a lot of people are waiting to see what does this spring selling season lead to into the summer. Are people going to put their houses up for sale in the market? Are they going to take advantage of more active buyers? But we just haven't seen that quite yet. And then the interest rates is really what's going to influence buyer activity. So I think there's a couple things that could happen. So the longer the interest rate kind of hovers where it is, it's been this way for a little while and it's been fairly consistent. It hasn't been very volatile, jumping up and down. So people can come to terms that this is kind of the new normal as far as the interest rate goes. The days of the 3% interest rate might be behind us and they may not come back. More realistically, from a historical perspective, this mid-6 range is pretty good historically still, but we've just been spoiled for so long. So do buyers get used to that as being back to normal, and do they start getting comfortable and then making moves, or do rates drop, which is still a possibility? And then does that get a bunch of people off the fence and then flood the market with buyers who are wanting to take advantage of the lower interest rates before they go back up? Or is there a chance that market rates keep on going up a little bit and then buyers get more and more hesitant? So all those scenarios can play out. I kind of tend to think that we'll hang tight where we're at and be pretty balanced, maybe a little bit of a decline at some point. I think that would be good for the market if we could get interest rates down a little bit, but not going to hold my breath. We work in the market that we're at. If you're in a situation where you have to buy or sell, you've got a job transfer, you've just got a situation that requires a change, then we deal with the market that we have. Don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future. But if you have some flexibility and you want to try to make some guesses and take advantage of that, then that's cool too. Everybody can do what they want. But that's basically what I've got this week. If you are enjoying the content, please go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel, drop a comment. That's all helping out. I appreciate you guys that take the time to watch this and trying to come up with more diverse material than just boring numbers all the time. But those that do want to stay on top of the market, I do appreciate you guys doing this. And If you want to talk to me directly about anything, you've got my information right there, my cell phone number, my email address, and of course, I'm here to help, and free consultations by phone in person. And I will see you next week. Thanks so much.